Hello students, welcome to the class of English literature. Today we are going to discuss a poem written by William Butler Yeats. The title of the poem is The Second Coming. This poem is included in the syllabus of BA Part 2nd. William Butler Yeats was a 20th century poet. He was born on 13 June 1865 and he died on 28 January 1939. He was an Irish poet, dramatist, prose writer, and one of the foremost figures of 20th century literature. His father was a lawyer and a well-known portrait painter. Yeats himself studied art for some time. He became member of the poetic movement in London in the 1890s and he was a keen worker in the Renaissance of the Irish theatre. His first volume of verse appeared in 1887. But in his earlier period of his dramatic production outweigh his poetry both in bulk and in import. So basically, or we can say in the beginning, Yeats was a dramatist. Together with Lady Gregory, he founded the Irish Theatre, which was known as the Abbey Theatre, and he served as its chief playwright until the movement was joined by John Synge. His plays usually treat Irish legends. They also reflect his fascination with mysticism and spiritualism. His best known dramas are The Countess Kathleen, The Land of Heart's Desire, The King's Threshold, etc. In 1923, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Yeats is one of the few writers whose greatest works were written after the award of the Nobel Prize, whereas he received the prize chiefly for his dramatic works. His significance today rests on his lyrical achievements. His poetry, especially the volumes The Wild Swans at Cooley, Michael Roberts and the Dancer, The Tower, The Winding Stairs and other poems, and last poems and pleas, made him one of the outstanding and most influential 20th century poets writing in English. His recurrent themes are the contrast of art and life, masks, cyclic theories of life, and the ideal of beauty and ceremony contrasting with the hubbub of modern life. He died in France in 1939. Yeats is considered as a dreamer and visionary who was fascinated by folklore, ballad, and the superstitions of the Irish peasantry. To fully appreciate his poems, one has to be fully conversant with Irish history and mythological stories. Besides, one has to be familiar with Yeats' personal system of thought presented in his book, A Vision. To understand his poems, one has to be familiar with his interest in magic, occultism, theosophy, and the complex symbolism which takes on multiple meanings in his poems. Yeats is considered to be a symbolist poet as he made extensive use of symbols to convey different thoughts and meanings in his poems. There is an introduction of the poem, The Second Coming. The poem The Second Coming was composed by Yeats in 1919 after the First World War, and the poem was earlier entitled as The Second Birth. In the beginning of the poem, the poet depicts a very apt and appropriate picture of post-war era. The World War has left the world in a situation of flux and disorder. There is restlessness, hopelessness, chaos, and anarchy. People have lost faith and conviction, and scenes of bloodshed have become the hallmark of the day. The line, "Things fall apart, the center cannot hold," portrays the intensity of the prevalent anarchy. The Second Coming is one of the most famous and frequently quoted poems in all of Western literature. It is a major work where Yeats feels that 20 centuries of Christianity are about to give way to antithetical civilization, in which the controlling authority may be cruel and more terrifying. The poem describes a deeply mysterious and powerful alternative to the Christian idea of the Second Coming. According to Christian idea, Jesus prophesied return to the earth as a savior, and he announced the kingdom of heaven. But here we see the Second Coming is of a different type of identity, a different type of authority that will be not like Jesus. The poem is divided into two stanzas. The poem's first stanza describes a world of chaos, confusion, and pain, and the second stanza, that is longer stanza, imagines the speakers receiving a vision of the future, but this vision replaces Jesus' heroic return with what seems to be the arrival of a beast. This depicts the end of the Christian era and the beginning of the barbarian era. The poem was written in 1919. It was the time when World War I was going on. The poet had seen atrocities, mass killings, diseases, and deaths around him, and this made him believe that there is no concept of morality in this world. Instead, the one who believes in doing the wrong things is the one who gets more benefited. That is text of the poem. Poet writes, "Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." Gyre means a circular motion. We can understand the word gyre by giving a picture in the corner. The poem opens with a mysterious metaphor. A falconer searches for his lost falcon that is moving in a widening gyre. Falconer is the bird. The bird itself can't hear the falconer. Falconer is the person who controls falcon. So the word falcon and falconer are symbolic. Perhaps falcon is not able to hear falconer because of the way that the surroundings are widening. He is moving in a circular motion. Here it is important to note about Yeats' system of seeing the world. He conceived of history as a kind of movements of gyres, which are shapes like cone spirals. According to Yeats, each phase of history is in contrary motion against the next in a dimension that is essentially beyond the limits of human understanding. The speaker's tone is notably measured and detached in the opening, suggesting little of the nightmarish vision to come in the next stanza. That said, the poem has now introduced its central premise of a loss of control. Flying around and around in a widening spiral, a falcon can no longer hear the call of its owner. Things are breaking down and their foundation is giving way. Pure destruction and lawlessness have spread across the world, and so has tidal wave darkened by blood. All the rituals of innocence have been swallowed by this tide. And the tide is the tide of blood. Here poet is referring the scenario of World War when there was a bloodshed all around and the ceremony of innocence is drowned. All the rituals of innocence have been swallowed by this tide of bloodshed. The best people are not motivated to act, but the worst people are impassioned and full of anger. They have passionate intensity. The image of the falconer, that is the human, is losing control over his environment, that is represented by the falcon. It symbolizes the shift from one phase of history to the next. Both opening lines use close repetition of the words to create a sense of disorientation. Turning and turning. There is a repetition of the word. As the falcon turns repeatedly in search of its master. The falcon here refers to the intellect of man, and falconer we can call the passionate feelings. The word gyre means spiral that widens on going up or down. The poet believes that the world history is cyclic. One era is replaced by the other, which is quite opposite to the first. Christian era that came 2000 years ago is coming to its end and will be soon replaced by a new era, a new age, which does not have any humanity and kindness, but it is dark and barbarian. The poet then explains the features of the new age, which is quite visible now. According to him, in this new era, the things fall apart and the center cannot hold. The center refers to the falconer and the things refers to falcon. In other words, center can refer to man's intellect and things refers to the feelings. Man does not have control over his feelings, and feelings which are now uncontrollable due to his greed. As the center is unable to hold, anarchy and confusion are prevailing all over the world. The blood is flowing like a stream. There is mass killings, murders, and death everywhere. In this new era, the good people or the intellectuals do not get justice, while those full of passionate intensity are enjoying. So, the first stanza of the poem depicts the transitional phase before the beginning of new era. These conditions have been prophesied in the Bible, and the poet prepares us for the next stage, which according to him will provide some relief. This is the second stanza. Here poet says, surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man. Surely, the speaker asserts that the world is near a revelation. Surely the second coming is at hand. No sooner does he think of the second coming than he is troubled by a vast image that came from the Spiritus Mundi. Spiritus Mundi means the collective spirit of mankind. A vision comes to the speaker from the world's collective unconsciousness. We can say it is a storehouse of imagination. And the speaker sees that there is a barren desert land where a creature with man's head and lion's body is coming to life. Its expression is like the sun. As he further says, A gaze, blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds. He says there is a creature, and its expression is like the sun, empty and without pity. There is no pity in his eyes. Its legs are moving slowly, and all around it fly the shadows of disturbed desert birds. The darkness drops again over the speaker's sight, but he knows that the Sphinx's 20 centuries of stony sleep have been made nightmare by the motion of rocking cradle. He says, the darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by rocking cradle. And what rough beast! Its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Bethlehem is the place where Jesus Christ was born. But after 2000 years, the era is changing and there is birth of another creature, but it will not be like Jesus. But there is another kind of creature which is coming at last and moving towards Bethlehem to be born. Everything becomes dark again, but the speaker knows something new. 2000 years of calm have been disrupted by the shaking of a cradle. And the speaker asks, what beast whose time has finally come is dragging itself towards Bethlehem, where it will be born? It is clear here that whatever connection once linked the metaphorical falcon and falconer has broken, and now human world is spiraling into chaos. The poet repeats the idea of second coming that symbolizes his eagerness for Christ's second coming. But soon the poet sees a big image of Spiritus Mundi, though it was supposed to provide relief. But the poet is troubled by seeing it, because it was not Christ. It is in the desert, and there is a creature with head of a man and body of a lion. It is pitiless and it has no sympathy for humans. The poet is explaining the condition of men during World War II. At that time, the people had seen so many murders and killings that they were not affected by seeing others' misery and sorrow. The beast is in no hurry and is moving slowly. Desert birds like vulture are flying around it. In the first stanza, falcon was too moving in the Jaya. The falcon and the desert birds are probably the same. The sight of Spiritus Mundi vanishes and darkness drops again. 20 centuries of stony sleep probably refers to barbarianism that existed before Christianity. According to the poet, during the Christian era, it was in deep sleep. Now, as the Christian era is about to end, a new era is about to begin. So, at the end of the poem, there is on contrary to biblical belief. According to Christian mythology, it is believed that Christ will be born when the world would be in disorder. He would do justice to both alive and dead. But the poet goes against it and shows us that the new era will be that of chaos and disorder. This second coming is clearly not Jesus, but instead there is a rough beast that humanity itself has woken up. With this final image of beast, the poem indicates that while humanity seemed to get more civilized in the 2000 years that followed Christ's birth, in reality, people have been sowing the seeds of their own destruction all along. The rough beast is now pitilessly slouching towards the birthplace of Jesus, likely in order to enter in a new age of darkness and nightmare. The poem Second Coming. The poem is written in blank verse, which means it has no rhyme scheme. There are unrhymed iambic pentameter lines. Iambic pentameter follows a rhythm with 5 partic feet for a total of 10 syllables in one line. But the Second Coming is written in a very rough iambic pentameter. The meter is so loose here and the exceptions so frequent that it actually seems closer to free verse. The Second Coming has 2 stanzas with 8 and 14 lines respectively. The form does not fit any standard scheme. In this poem, the regularity of the meter is constantly under threat, especially in the second stanza. The first stanza is the much more measured in tone and meter. If we look at the meter, lines number 3, 4, 5, 7 and 8, 5 out of 8 lines, they fit the metrical scheme well enough. But the poem in fact starts with metrical variation, hinting at the picture of chaos and confusion that is to come. So the Second Coming does not have a clear rhyme scheme. The first 4 lines almost rhyme in couplets, Jair, Falconer, hold, world, but not quite. Considering that the poem seeks to paint a picture of chaotic world in which the center cannot hold, it makes sense that it does not employ strong end rhymes. A clear rhyme scheme would probably suggest order and pattern rather than disorder. So the lack of rhyme shows how broken this world of anarchy really is. Technically talking, line number 9 and 10 rhymes, but that is because they end in the same word. This is an example of epistrophe emphasizing how close the speaker feels the Second Coming is, or rather how close they feel it ought to be, given the chaos portrayed in the first stanza. The identity of the speaker in the poem is not specified, that who is speaking here. However, the poem does offer a few clues as to speaker's perspective. It's important to notice the clear difference in tone between stanza number 1 and stanza 2. The opening stanza has no intervention that makes the speaker's role obvious. There are no first person pronouns, nor do there seem to be any subjective opinion expressed. The first stanza reads more like kind of weird news bulletin, listing all chaos, confusion and misery in the world. The only thing that suggests that the first stanza may not be entirely objective is the use of word Jaya, which is a mystical, philosophical idea from its own system, about which we were talking in the introduction, that he wrote a book, A Vision, in which he introduced his own system of thought. The second stanza begins with an important shift in speaker's role in the poem. Suddenly, the speaker is introducing their own subjective opinion, crying out that it must surely be time for revolution and the Second Coming. Indeed, the repeated surely and the Second Coming suggest an air of desperation, which is reinforced by exclamation mark of line 11. In line 13 through 18, the speaker receives an image. Here he is talking about an image from Spiritus Mundi, that is from the world's collective unconsciousness. This vision seems to be premonition, or which the speaker then comments on. The poem or the stanza ends with a grim note as the beast from the vision makes its way towards reality. The speaker, we can conclude, that is a kind of visionary, someone who can interpret the chaos of the first stanza and offer some clue about what it means. The speaker also seems to have some alignment with the Christian moral and mythical framework, and it is the collapse of the Christian world that they seem to foresee. Thank you.